It's pumpkin spice time on Brains on Games, and we're going to preview an expansion with a Halloween theme. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we're going to preview an expansion to a game, and the expansion has a Halloween theme. This is a super thematic game that I talked about before on the show. It is a game that was sent to me recently by the folks over at Gadabout Games, a game called Turf War. The expansion is called Trick or Treat, appropriately enough. Now, Turf War is a game, it's a two-player game only, so it plays with only two players. It's a game that's works for teenagers, so age 13 and up, and it's a game that plays in only about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes or so to play a game of Turf War. But this is an expansion, so you need the base game in order to try out these cards. Let's take a deeper look at Turf War Trick or Treat. Turf War is a light card game where what you're trying to do is sway neighbors over to your yard. You're trying to create the best yard that's going to bring neighbors onto your side. You're competing against your opponent to have the best lawn and the best yard. And the game is going to end when the last neighbor is swayed, and then players are going to count up points. So you earn points by swaying those neighbors, like I said, or through the features that you're going to put into your yard. You might put a fountain, you might have some oak trees or some sort of a garden. And I will encourage you to go back. I did talk about the original Turf War back when it was up on Kickstarter quite some time ago, and I'm not going to go into super great detail about the base game. I want to focus on the new cards and how those change things up. But it is a game where players are going to either start their turn at home, where you can play cards into your yard, you can use cards from your hand, or they're going to be away, and that's when they go to work, and then they can go to the market and buy cards. So you're drafting cards into your deck, and then you're playing them into this tableau to earn points at the end of the game, and like I said, to sway those neighbors. One of my favorite mechanisms about Turf War is that, there are a lot of take that cards in the game. There are pests that you can play into opponents' yards. There's a stealth drone that you can use to destroy things from your opponent's deck. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the take that mechanism, but what I really like about how Turf War does it is that when you're at home, your neighbor can't, unless they have a special card that will allow it, your neighbor can't play cards into your lawn and wreck your stuff. But it's only when you're away. So you go to the market to get new cards for your deck, but that's risky because that's when your opponent can start playing mosquitoes and termites and other things into your yard to ruin your plans and to reduce the number of points that you're going to be able to get. So you're going back and forth. You're going to the market, you're earning coins and buying cards. You're going back home, you're playing cards into your lawn or your opponent's lawn if he's away. And then the game is going to end, like I said, when the last neighbor is swayed. Now, what does Trick or Treat add to this equation? Well, first of all, appropriately enough, there's a new currency, which is candy. So when you go to the market, normally you would go to the market, you'd buy a card. Well, now you can go to the market and do another thing. You can buy a card if you want to, but you can also buy candy. Each piece of candy is going to cost you 3 coins, but each piece of candy that you haven't spent or given away to trick-or-treaters is going to give you another victory point at the end of the game. There are some other ways that you can get candy too. If you have an apple tree in your yard, you're going to get some candy at the start of every turn. The cauldron will allow you to earn candy if you trash a card. So it's like you're throwing cards into the cauldron and they're coming out as candy somehow. If you've got a pumpkin in your yard, you can earn some candy by trashing this card. You can even trash it from your hand and earn some candy in that way. And the candy is really important because there are some new cards in the deck that are going to pop up in the marketplace. And these guys are really interesting because they look on the back, when you've got them stacked up in the deck, they look just like all the other cards, but they're trick-or-treaters. So some of the cards in Turf War are events, and they're going to cause something to happen as soon as you flip them over. One of them that came up in a recent game that we played was the Recycling Day card, where you shuffle up the trash pile and you shuffle up the cards in the marketplace and the cards in the deck, and then you replenish the marketplace from there once everything is all back together. But these guys are special. So they're trick-or-treaters. You've got a guy dressed as a mummy. You've got a little person with a jack-o'-lantern head on here, a little person with a witch costume on. And if these pop up in the deck, they're both neighbors that you can sway and events. So you have to do something right away when the trick-or-treaters pop up. And that is, you have to give them candy. If you don't have candy, they're going to play a trick. So for example, with this little mummy, you can pay 1 candy to sway him into your yard, and that's going to give you 1 victory point. Or if you don't have the candy or you choose not to spend it, you have to play a pest from the store or from the trash into your yard. So you're putting negative cards into your own yard if you don't sway this little person by giving him some candy. The little witch is going to turn one of your grass plots into dirt if you don't give her 2 pieces of candy. So you've got kind of fun little artwork, and it remains super thematic. Trick-or-treaters come to your door, you give them candy, or they play a trick on you. One of the things that jumped out at us about these cards is that it makes going to the marketplace a little more risky. When you draft a card from the market, you're going to draw another card to replace it. And if it happens to be a trick-or-treater, you better have some candy on hand to give that person if you don't want them to play that trick on your yard. That did cause some problems in one of the games that we played. Oh my goodness, we had this situation where we were coming to the game's end. I had this great pile of trees and plants. A couple of places in my yard were quite filled up, and my son managed to get a pest that caused me to trash my biggest pile of cards. So the cards that were going to earn me the most points all of a sudden went to the trash. So I needed to start replenishing things. And I had to do it quickly because it was almost the end of the game. Almost all the neighbors were swayed. And then all of a sudden, what happened? Recycling day. I flipped over a recycling day card as I was going to the market to try and get a plant. Everything got shuffled back in, and didn't I draw 4 of those trick-or-treaters who basically blasted my lawn back into the Stone Age, and I was right back to the starting point when my son was almost finished playing the game. So it totally messed me up. I felt a little bit, I will be honest with you, it was a little frustrating that I kept turning these trick-or-treaters because maybe the deck wasn't shuffled well enough, but there were enough of them that were left in the deck that they just kept coming up, and there was not a thing I could do about it. So I wound up losing that game by a lot because there was no way for me to catch up at that point because we were already near the end of the game. And in addition to the trick-or-treaters, there are Halloween-themed neighbors that go in the neighbor deck. So these are the more normal neighbors like you would have had in the original version of Turf War. You've got a mad scientist and a mummy, and let's see, a witch, a real witch this time, not just a kid in a costume, it looks like. You've got a vampire, and you've got Frankenstein's monster, Frank. And these are all different ways that you're going to earn points. And just like in the original game, sometimes you need to bribe those monsters to get them to sway them over to your side. And sometimes you just need to have certain things in your yard in order to win them over. So just like the original Turf War, it's super thematic. You've got trick-or-treaters that are going to play a trick on you if you don't get candy. You've got these monsters and mad scientists that you can bring over to your yard. It's like the Munsters or the Addams Family are living on your street all of a sudden. You're trying to impress them with your decorations that you have. And that is my question for this episode. My question is this: what are your favorite Halloween-themed games? There are some scary games out there. A friend of mine was showing me his new copy that he just got of The Thing, that old John Carpenter movie, has a board game version. We talked about, I think, an Alien game around last Halloween. So what are your favorite Halloween-themed games? And if you have other holiday-themed games that you really like, I'd love to hear your comments, and you can leave those in the comments section below the video. What skills are you developing when you play a game like Turf War? Well, it is a game now. I've got these things lined up in a grid, but of course that's not what your game is going to look like. This is just to show off those cards. But what skills are you developing by playing a game like Turf War? Well, it is a game where you're really deciding where are you going to put these pieces. Like I said, I had a couple of spots that were really built up, but that made me vulnerable. It was going to earn me lots of points, but that made me vulnerable when my son played that card and I had to trash everything on one stack. So that was really frustrating, but I would have earned lots of points if I had some way to prevent him from playing that card. you are doing a lot of spatial planning. So it's a visual spatial game because you're going to earn points based on the relationships between the cards that are in different areas on the board. Sometimes you'll get a feature that will earn you extra bonus victory points based on the cards that are in the same row or the same column in that grid in your yard. So you're planning ahead in that way. You have to be careful when you're playing the game about where you put trees and plants because you only have a certain amount of space in your yard to put these things, and adding trees gives you some extra space to add some additional cards. You are planning ahead and trying to budget your candy, to budget the coins that you're earning through the game, and anytime you're planning ahead and you're budgeting and you're trying to tackle things in a way that's organized, if you're making predictions, those are all examples of executive functioning skills, those skills that you need in any strategy game to work towards a goal, and particularly if you're trying to do that in an organized way. Now, final thoughts about Turf War Trick or Treat. Well, this remains a super thematic, super relatable game. I know I said that last time I reviewed this one, but the new cards and the new mechanisms, the new currency of candy really fit that Halloween theme. And so the game remains thematic and relatable. They kept that clever home and away mechanism. I really like that idea that your yard can only be sabotaged unless there's some special card in play. Like I said, your yard can only be sabotaged when you're away from home. So I thought that was clever and kind of a fun way to do things, making it risky for you to go to the market in the original game. And it's the same thing here. And those trick-or-treaters do add a real wrinkle, an additional risk factor to going to the market, because anytime you take a card out of the market, you have to replace it, and the trick-or-treaters are going to wreak havoc in your yard if you don't have enough candy to sway them over to your side. So it does make refilling the market risky. It adds quite a wrinkle there, and maybe it increases the luck or the impact of being unlucky. Originally, when you filled up the market, well, you could fill up the market anytime. It didn't matter. There wasn't going to be any harm to you by refilling the market. Some event might occur, but there weren't so many events in that deck, but definitely they're increased by adding those trick-or-treaters. Downsides of Turf War Trick or Treat and the original Turf War is that, well, it's 2-player only. So if you've got 3 people in the house, there's one person who's going to be left out. Now, it is a quick game. If you wanted to play a tournament, 15 to 20 minutes, you can get through a game. I would say it's probably a little bit longer with the expansion because there are some extra neighbors in play. And it's so heavily impacted by that take that mechanism that if you're a person who's frustrated or whose feelings, if your kids' feelings would be easily hurt by playing one of those pests into their yard, well, then that's something you may want to be cautious about. Take that is a big factor in the Turf War game. And like I said, the luck factor or the bad luck factor of turning over a trick-or-treater at the wrong time is really increased in this one as well. But that being said, this super thematic game, I only have a couple of Halloween-themed games on my shelf back here, so this is a great addition to those. I know that my kids are going to pull out this deck as Halloween gets closer to show their friends how this all works. So thanks so much to the folks over at Gadabout Games for sending this game my way. If you have any questions or suggestions or comments, or you want to answer my question, you can leave those in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and happy Halloween.